What's up, everybody? Spear and Clover podcast. I'm your host, Jason Skisick, as always. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Michael Risher. Mike is a very close friend, somebody I've worked with for a long time and admire quite a bit. He's also the owner of Rehab Lab, which is a chiropractic facility in Chicago, as well as, what's the name of the podcast?
The Fantasy Football Astronauts.
The Fantasy Football Astronauts. Awesome, man. Mike, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Excited to get on. I love hopping on podcasts, talking about chiropractic, but I love talking about, business, how things got started. So this is a lot of fun to be able to talk about with you.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this conversation a lot because, obviously you work in wellness, you work in, wellness, right? And you help people with their bodies, but you're not a gym owner. You're not, my typical avatar that I've worked with in my career in the past. And you are somebody that I've worked with since you started the business. Mm-hmm. And so I'm really excited to kind of dig in a little bit, hopefully learn a little bit about, kind of where you're coming from and see where you're going. What I like to do is just kind of give you a moment here to kind of introduce yourself and what it is that you do and where you guys are at now. So if you could kind of in your own words.
Yeah. So like you said, I'm Dr. Michael Risher. I have been a chiropractor. I graduated September of 2019. So I'm still newer as a chiropractor, relatively. Opened up the Rehab Lab, January 1st, 2020. Obviously, that was a crazy year. So it was a super weird time to open a business. So I feel like what was incredibly atypical as a business owner to have, a worldwide shutdown. But I've been talking to people a lot about adapt or die. And, obviously we adapted. We're finishing out 2 years here. As of recording this, 2 years is, or the 3-year mark starts Monday. I believe. So, we're hitting that 2-year mark and we obviously adapted and survived. And I know lots of cool stories there. And it feels like every step of the way, there's just been more and more to expand. And you've been there from the start. I mean, you employed me as I was, starting this, and you gave me my first spot to open up. And so you've literally seen me and talked to me weekly and monthly since before this thing started. So it's been a lot of fun. And this is the second business that I've owned, but definitely the more successful of the two businesses.
Well, I wouldn't call it quits on the Fantasy Football Astronauts quite yet. I think it sounds like there's a promising future there. And, I don't mean to sound like I'm tongue in cheek there but it is such a fun name. Yeah, you actually hit the nail on. You did mention that, you're actually in the location where our gym is. So, and you've been a part of our community now for some time. And everybody has enjoyed having you. I think it's going to be interesting because I feel like you're a pretty humble guy. So I'm going to have to pry some of this out of you, I think. So Dr. Mike becomes a doctor in 2019, opens his first location in 2020, January 1st, which is maybe 2 months before, the worst possible operating conditions. Mm-hmm. So has business grown through those 2 years?
Yeah. So basically January of 2020, and I'm pretty open with the financial piece of it, especially early on, because I think specifically what I am going to be able to offer to young doctors on one day is how do you start a cash practice and how do you be an entrepreneur when you haven't been trained as an entrepreneur. So kind of having tracked everything and then seeing like the worst case possible scenario, I'm totally open with the financial piece and the patient acquisition piece. So we started out, it was like, I think did $1,200 January, maybe about $2,400 in February. So like definitely growing, lots of outreach. March was set to be a really big month, more than double. And then obviously it shuts down halfway through. Mm-hmm. And then I think April we made $555.50. Overhead was exactly $550. So the profit that month was $5.50. And so I will never forget those numbers because it was just straight 555 and somehow, had the smallest profit margin possible. But yeah, so that was kind of how we started. And, as of right now, and I can even pull it up, this past year, I believe we had 190 new patients. Wow. Which is, just incredible growth. And so many of those patients have been professional athletes. I work with 30 plus, I've forgotten the number. I have to go, see how many now, but 30 plus NFL athletes, a handful of MLB, volleyball, basketball, you name it, we're in the sport. And so over 40 professional athletes that we work with now, and, expanding from just one doctor in 2019 or 2020 to two doctors in 2021. And then now we're adding another room going into 2022. So it's constantly expanding and growing. And I mean, we've at least doubled every year thus far. So I'm hoping for another doubling this year.
Oh, you're just getting started, baby.
Right.
Yeah. So it's so interesting because so many of the people, especially the ones that I have personal relationships with, like yourself, like others that have been on the show, it's been so exciting to watch your growth. But more importantly, I root for you. I love seeing you succeed. Like I've said it before about you. I've said it before about other people. If I could invest in just Michael Risher, like if I could just be a part of that, I just love seeing you succeed. And I've been fortunate that there's people that are older than me that have mentored me. And I think they would say the same thing about me. So it's really, really been a really rewarding thing to kind of just be just a fly on the wall and to have some role in seeing it happen. And I think you've made some great moves. There's a lot to unpack about what you just said. And so, there's a lot we can talk about there. Like number one,
Absolutely.
Obviously starting in a very difficult time. How did you acquire clients? So, I want to talk about that. I want to talk about the practice, with general population. And then of course, the elephant in the room is I want to talk about, how it was that you've been able to be so successful, like overwhelmingly successful in identifying and working with professional athletes at the scale that you have. So for starters, what was going in, what was your plan to grow the business? And then how did you adapt that to acquire clients during COVID?
Yeah. So it's funny because those go absolutely hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
It was essentially the exact same process, just applied differently.
Okay.
Once everything shut down. So really, we go back to 2016. I have a friend of mine who has a fake personality online with hundreds of thousands of Instagram followers and like one of the biggest Supreme collections in the world. I don't know if you know what Supreme is, but a top 5 largest Supreme collection in the world. And I asked him, I had a phone call with him. I was like, you're making money off of Instagram. How do I do that?
Yeah.
I had 1,200 followers, all friends and family at that point, people that I met working out, people that you meet through college. And so it was all personal friends that followed me. And he's basically broke down how to grow your Instagram following. And that was back then. It's obviously changed a ton now, and you gotta stay up on that. But my whole thought process was, I'm in school. I can't market my business because I don't have a business, and it's not legal for me to do chiropractic on people right now.
Mm-hmm.
But if I even have 5,000 followers by the time I graduate, that's 5,000 people that know what I do, that believe in me to some extent, that are interested in what I'm doing. And that's 5,000 more people that I can market to day one than if everyone starts their own business profile as soon as they open the business. And it's like, okay, well, I can start with 5,000, or I can wait until I open the business and, start with 120 of my friends and family,
Sure.
and I've seen people do it both ways. And so essentially what I did, I just started posting videos of myself working out. If I had an injury that came up during CrossFit, I would fix it myself and, post my rehab process. And these are the rehab exercises I'm doing. And so I started to generate, a population of people that followed me and were interested in what I did. Come time to graduate, I have 9,000 followers, almost at 10,000. I think I broke 10,000 like January of 2020. So I was right at the cusp. And so now you have all of those people that, if anyone knows someone in Chicago that's injured, any one of those 9,000 people across the world, it's like, okay, well, now you have a referral, but there's also a social currency that comes with that.
Yeah.
You Google me, okay, or Google like sports chiropractor in Chicago or whatever. My website SEO might not be great, but my Instagram is going to be top 3. And so you go through and you're like, oh, wow, this guy has whatever I'm at, 15,000 followers. How much more reputable is he than someone with 100 Google reviews, And so I kind of went that route because you can't get the Google reviews until you treat people, but you can build up your Instagram following now, 3 years before you even open a business. And so that was the initial way that I marketed myself. And I mean, Instagram has paid so without running ads. I got a little bit of ad spend from my sister-in-law that worked at Facebook, but I mean, without really running ads, Instagram has been just a huge, huge cash cow for me. Referrals, people finding me online, like that has been huge. The other thing that I did was, as soon as I knew I was opening up, I walked around and went to every single gym within a mile radius, walked into every single one, introduced myself to the gym owner, the trainer, got the business cards and said, hey, I want to treat you as a professional courtesy so you know what I do. And I think I can help your clients, but I don't want to, solicit myself to your clients. I want you to believe in what I do.
Yep.
And so I gave out, the number of free treatments that I gave out was crazy. Hit up trainers online. If it was a personal trainer, I Googled all the best personal trainers in Chicago, sent everybody an email, and treated anyone that wanted to come in. And so that's kind of how I did my marketing. Was very, very personal, but to the people that were going to refer me patients. I don't market myself necessarily to someone that's in pain. I market myself to the person that's going to refer them in, if that makes sense.
It does. No, that's awesome. And I was the recipient of that, right? You came
Right.
in and you started to work at the gym as a coach. And obviously, I think there's just our facility, our community has just been flypaper for cool people. I think, as much as I love you, you're not atypical on the staff. We have a lot of really cool people. You fit right in, and that was really great. I know that we worked out a deal very quickly as soon as you were practicing. Basically, everybody that joins the gym gets a free movement consultation with you. Everybody that comes to you gets a free 7 days with the gym. Stuff like that.
Right.
That's old school, right? That's old school, marketing back and forth, or referral marketing or whatever.
Right.
One that I got from TJ Belger, who owns TJ's gym out in Marin County, who's a friend and was on the show. He went to the highest end hairstylists in San Francisco. And he just said, I want to personal train you for free. And he filled up his entire gym within 3 months from that. So a super good way to go. At what point does that turn into professional athletes, and how did that transition happen?
Yeah. So this is where I went in a direction that basically everyone that tells you, when you're in school, everyone gives you advice on how to open a practice. And I didn't do any of it. I saw, okay, I'm getting advice. And don't get me wrong, I loved all my professors. Love them all. I think they're all amazing humans. The ones that were giving me advice were not the ones that currently owned a thriving business. Otherwise, they wouldn't be a professor at the school, And so I just took everything they said. Oh, go be an associate, go work for someone else, learn the business side of things, make sure you accept insurance because it's really hard to grow cash practice and all this stuff. And I just said, nah, screw all of that. I want to work with athletes, or I want to work with people that have goals, right? At the very least, you don't have to be a world-class athlete, but if you're in the gym and your goal is to get better in the gym, or your goal is to, do X, Y, I want to work with people with goals. So I made decisions early on to not market myself to the general population that's just, looking to get an adjustment. I made very conscious decisions to put myself inside of gyms with driven people that were going to refer me driven people, because that's who I wanted to work with. Every single person at school, every single doctor said, you have to accept everybody, otherwise you're never going to make it. I very much am a testament to, no, you market to who you want to draw in. And so I took a slight pay cut to work with some guys that were training to be in the NFL. I, put myself in these scenarios where these high level athletes that I wanted to work with would be there. But at the same time, at the very least, if I didn't get any professional athlete, I was around driven people, and that was with goals. And that was my main marketing piece. But then, all of a sudden you put yourself in those situations, and I really have no explanation other than God just placed people and placed scenarios in my life, because you can't make this stuff up. You can't, in your wildest dreams, explain how, all right, NFL player gets injured while he's working out at the gym I just happened to be in. Trainer pulls me onto the floor. We fix him in 30 seconds. And then now he's bought in. Another guy out of the blue messages me on Instagram like, hey, can you do in-home visits? I want treatment 3 times a week. I didn't have to sell myself at all to this person. They reached out to me and said, hey, this is what I want. Can you do it? And then, the number of athletes with over 1 million followers that read my DM, responded to me, and then had me come treat them without ever knowing me. is astounding. And like, that's so I put myself in those scenarios. And then this leads into what happened when everything shut down is I was like, okay, I can still try to see a ton of people at whatever the normal price is, or I can start to target the people that need it for their job and are willing to pay a premium. And so I started to, I DM'd so many professional athletes. I followed every single player on the Bears and was just like, if there's an off chance these people need their body, that's their income, how can I target them? And that's really how I started to, grow was, okay, I'm marketing myself on Instagram. I'm, reaching out to people, to trainers. As soon as everything shuts down and the trainers aren't referring anyone and everyone's doing online stuff anyway, how can I take that same strategy of Instagram marketing and, like interpersonal marketing and just shift to a population that without a doubt needs me to do their job? Yeah, and so that was kind of how it all happened.
That's all so fascinating. There's a lot in there. The first thing I would say is, and I really identify with what you said about the professors, and that's not to disparage them. I think that there is wisdom in conventional wisdom, right? That definitely is. And that is a path for people.
Right.
However, if the Spear and Clover podcast exists for any reason at all, it's to talk about the fish that swim away from the pack, right?
Right.
And so to hear you tell that story, I just could not be more convicted, as I was before this call, that you're an excellent representation of what that symbol and what this podcast is all about, right? And so, if you think about like, where would you be? You didn't, maybe you did, but I don't get the impression that you did harder work than the exact mirror image of you that did follow that conventional wisdom. But look at how much further you made it. Again, not to disparage those people, just by swimming against the grain and doing different things to make yourself become aware in people's awareness, right?
Exactly. And that was one of the moments that I had, because I had an offer to go work at a place in the suburbs, and this doc was my mentor, really great. They're expanding, all this stuff, everything looked perfect. And did I not have an entrepreneur mindset? Did I not have an entrepreneur drive? Then I would have taken that. I mean, 10 out of 10 people in my class would have taken that job offer, because you're working with athletes. It's mostly cash practice. It's a really good population. Everything's built out. You don't really have to market yourself a ton, all this stuff. And then I sat and did the math. And I was like, okay, in order for me to make what I want to make, just money wise, like take all the fun of, is this the population I want to work with? In order for me to make what I want to make for someone else, I have to bring in 15 patients to where I'm treating 15 more patients a week than I am right now. And because some of that goes to your employer, all that, you don't get to keep all that. Said, okay, at the minimum that I want to make what I want to make, I have to have 15 patients a week working for someone else. Then I did the math for what do I have to make, or what do I have to bring in if I want to work for myself? And it was 15 patients a week. And all of a sudden, that 15 patients a week is the mark I have to get to regardless. Now, at the 16th patient, I'm making this much more myself than I am for someone else. At the 20th patient, I'm all the way up here if I'm working for myself, whereas I'm still capped, essentially, working for someone else. And so it was a no-brainer. It's like, all right, well, regardless, I have to do all of the work to get 15 patients. I might as well take 100% of the profit than give, 40, 60% to someone else. And that was the big eye-opening thing for me, is everyone has to do all the same work. Are you willing to take the risk to have the big payoff?
Yeah. And it's funny when you talk about risk from an entrepreneur's perspective, because I think the traditional wisdom is that entrepreneurs are risky people. And I'm not going to sit here and lie to you or the listeners and say that I'm not someone who is comfortable with risk, because I am. And I know that you are as well. But Mike Bledsoe, formerly host of Barbell Shrug, and he's a great coach out there, was an early mentor for me. He was like, yeah, people always tell me that I'm risky. And I look at them in their corporate jobs and I think, you're way riskier. Somebody can walk up and fire you tomorrow. Motherfucker, it would take me years to attrit down to losing my job, And so as I'm watching you, I know that you've been very intentional about, growing in a lean, functional way. You've frankly hiring slower than I've recommended, right? And so just the ability, like at this point, you're almost undeniable. And not only that, but you have an authenticity and you're good at what you do, which not everybody, unfortunately, is. And you must be, because people keep coming back. And so maybe speak a little bit, how are you getting folks? to recur? How are you holding on to folks? Because I saw a post from you on social media that kind of, illuminated some of that, but I'd love to hear in your own words. It's one thing to have this great Instagram account. And if I'm just listening to this as a casual observer and I'm not a chiropractor, most people won't be that listen to this.
Mm.
I'm wondering, like, okay, great. So he's got these followers. He's some young snot-nosed kid out of college, and he's gotten this thing. Well, you have to keep those folks. If they come in and they don't get the experience they're looking for, they don't get better. Speak to that. How has that gone for you? And what are some things that have made you successful in retaining those folks?
Yeah. And real quick, I want to, part of the slow hiring process is I am married to someone that is so far the opposite wise. And we've talked about this.
Yeah.
I'm married to someone that is so like her dream job is to work 9 to 5 in a cubicle. She's a chiropractor as well. She works with me. We both own the practice, but like every decision that I make, and I think this is a benefit, every decision that I make, I have to first and foremost make sure my family is taken care of. If I were a single dude, I mean, maybe it would have grown faster for sure. Maybe I would have made different decisions, but like, it doesn't matter if I fail. It's like, oh, whatever, I can go live with my parents and, I can do that. But like to have the family and say, okay, every risky decision that I make has to have all of these reasons backed by why I want to do it. And the payout, it's been slower growth, but it's actually forced me to make more critical decisions and more informed and better decisions. So I think every decision that I've made thus far has been the correct one, or at least to an extent, whereas I could have made way more decisions. 50 to 75% might have been right, but 25% would have been wrong and set me back. And so I could have, it's definitely slowed me, but it's made every single step far more correct, far more calculated, and far more successful.
Yeah. And before you go on to because I actually want to plumb that a little bit before we go on to, we'll talk about retention in a minute, but working with your spouse, working with somebody who is a counter to you is, I think, very, very valuable, but it's also a unique challenge. How do you mitigate, as somebody like you and I are, and I think we share a lot in common when it comes to that stuff, how do you mitigate somebody who doesn't just see the sunshine and roses that you and I see?
Yeah.
What were some things that you were able to do? What were some maybe structures or things that you put in place that got her comfortable? Because she left a good paying job, right?
Right.
So what were some of those things that you mitigated?
Yeah. So she left another chiropractic clinic. She was on salary there. It was pretty much a lateral move. She makes more now here, but it wasn't the case when she first, joined. It was fairly lateral with, I don't know, maybe to what most people would say, all the eggs are in one basket, more risk, that sort of thing. And we had a ton of conversations about this over the entire year. It was, how do I get Kristen to join me? How do I get her? Because she's a great doc. And basically, I had to build a base of security. Before moving forward, I had to build enough security so that she felt like if she joined me, regardless what happened, we were going to be okay. So essentially, I built up whatever, like a 6-month emergency fund where if we did not see a single person, we would be fine. And I had to get to that point where 6-month emergency fund, that's the baseline. You and I, if we don't make a single cent for 6 months, we're not going to suffer. And that was at the base what it took. But then from there, I had to, with every expansion thing that I wanted to do, I had to come up with a list of pros and cons, because at the end of the day, she trusts me. I can make whatever decision I want in the business, but to have her fully backing every decision was very important to me. So now, okay, if I want to go approach some guys to, do travel chiropractic with them, I have to tell her why that's important. Adding another room to the clinic, I have to tell her, hey, this is how we're going to pay for it. Baseline, if we don't see another patient, it's not going to affect us at all. But here's the upside, and here's how much more this can help us. And this is why the timing's right, all this stuff. And so every single decision I had to make was pros, cons. The pros need to make sense for our family, and we need to have security as a family. And the cons have to be, you have to have thought about them at the very least. So that's kind of how I did that, was build up the base of security. And then every decision that I made, make sure that she understood that I was being thoughtful.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about that, you and I offline, and
Mhm.
I've worked in multiple businesses with my wife Donna, and frankly, if there's one thing that I really do enjoy as like a niche within working with entrepreneurs, it's this husband and wife, people that work together as a
Yeah.
family, because I think it's a really challenging thing, but I think it's so rewarding if you can find common ground, find structures in place, and even just the way that I've set up the last two businesses that I've been involved in or owned has been so much more thoughtful and structured from the beginning. Even this
Mhm.
podcast that she's not a member of yet, she may very well work in with us in some capacity. But when I set this business up, I did all of the legwork that I've had you do, or that I would have had somebody else do, or that I've
Right.
learned from other people before we ever even started to record. And I think
Yep.
that a lot of that, just imagine how much better you can hold these ideas in your hand once you've gone through the rigor of defining them and coming up with your balances and your counterpoints and your pros and cons and the structures
Yep.
around which you're going to do it. Because as you said, you want to surround yourself with people that are out there trying to achieve and execute. Why?
Mhm.
Because you fucking are an achiever and
Right.
executor. So do I question that you would be able to execute and succeed on your own? Absolutely not. But the fact that you're not just out there gunslinging means that you're
Right.
actually putting out these meaningful things and you're really able to help
Exactly.
people with thoughtful, predetermined stuff. So that's, kudos to you, of course, but I think that's
Appreciate it.
really special. If you're listening to this and you are working with your spouse and you have it all figured out, that's great. If you're struggling, the advice that I gave you, the advice that I learned myself was, always viewing that relationship on the longest possible timeline, like an infinite
Mhm.
timeline, which means
Yep.
that every bump in the road is a very minor thing compared to
Yep.
that infinite timeline, right? And then
Mhm.
two, having agreements in place, whether it's SOPs, whether it's
Right.
operating agreements, whether it's rules and systems that
Yep.
you have in the business. That way, it's no longer, Mike and Kristen arguing about payroll or whatever it might be, or wouldn't be
Right.
payroll, but it's now, well, this is what the document says, this is what we agreed upon, this is what we do. And so the more of
Yep.
those questions you can have answered ahead of time, the better, right?
And I think the one thing I would add to that is remember that the relationship aspect is the most important thing, right?
100%.
If you're
Yeah.
listening to this podcast, you're already moving in the right direction. Where, like, I just literally just told my last patient, whatever, 30 minutes ago, if you took everything Rehab Lab away from me, made me start in a completely different career, in a completely different path, I am convinced that I would be totally fine, right? And so I know that if my priority is my relationship, I'm going to be fine. Worst case scenario, I'm still going to be fine because I'm going to be resilient and I'm going to figure it out. So I have to prioritize my relationship because that's the most important thing. The business is not the most important thing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think it is definitely icing on the cake that you're, very, very good at it. So back to the attrition
Yeah.
part or the retention part. What are you doing that maybe sets you aside? Because I know there's a lot of people that come into this industry and they struggle. So what are the things that you think gets people coming back, and how have you seen retention to be so far?
Yeah. And I think there's some crazy stat like 30 to 50% of chiropractors will not be a chiropractor within 5 years
Wow.
because it is very difficult. And so what I did from the start was I set myself up differently than physical therapists and differently than chiropractors, right? I want to be the best mix of a physical therapist, a trainer, and a chiropractor that I can. And having a little bit of insight from all three of those made my product completely different than anyone else. And there are bits and pieces that I picked up from mentors and all this stuff, but you come to me and you're getting a product that I created on my own and that I'm proud of. And so when people come in to see me now, they're not just seeing a chiropractor, they're not seeing a physical therapist, they're not seeing a trainer, they're getting a little bit of all three. And so that's the first thing that I did was find a way to separate myself from, the
Dogma.
I struggle to even say competition because I don't see myself as competition. I see myself as a completely different thing, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So I separated first. But the other thing is when you really care about a person, they can, and I'm sure there's science on this,
Yeah.
they're going to get better faster if you care about them. If they feel like they're stepping into a machine, then they don't feel the attention, they don't feel the affection, they don't feel understood nearly as well. And what I have people tell me every single time they're asked or every time they're referred is they feel heard. They feel like I understood their problem, and they felt like I was putting the most effort I could into solving their problem. And so you may not get 100% better. I don't expect you to get 100% better on your first visit. I'm not trying to take advantage of you. I'm not trying to just throw you in a system. I genuinely want you to get better. And so that's kind of another separating thing. You go to, and I don't want to talk trash on Athletic because there are a lot of great docs there, but it's definitely a system. You go in and you get, there's one doc working with 6, 7 people doing, same exercises, and people get better slower there.
Well, I don't mean to cut you off, sorry. But to that point, can you blame them? And again, you're not disparaging them, but let's talk about why. It's because when there's a series of decisions that you make that result in this bland kind of vanilla performance, and that's like, all right, here's what insurance will pay for. We must satisfy our solution to fit within these number of visits. This is what our society has deemed, whatever. For one reason or another, there's these series of things that are happening behind the scenes. And so it doesn't matter if you come out of school pie-eyed and like ready to change the world. If you put yourself into that thresher, you come out corn syrup, buddy. Like, I don't care what you do because you went through the wrong machine. And so the fact that you were, cogent enough to make the choice to not go into that machine was why you're now able to operate in a way that's free.
Yeah.
And it's funny you talk about caring about your patients. And I don't think you can give that to everybody. So if you're a listener and you're like, hey man, I'm getting ready to open this mechanic shop, or I'm getting ready to start a hairstylist place or whatever, or you've been a business owner for many years, if you don't feel that way about your clients, I can't teach you that. Mike can't teach you that. Right. What you can do is you can put yourself in a position where you give a shit about what it is that you're doing every day. And that authenticity comes through. And I know people that really give a shit about making money. I know day traders. I know people in financial services. I know people that are just entrepreneurs that are really motivated by making money. And those people do great. And they're authentic in what they do. What doesn't work is taking somebody like me or you and putting us in that role, or taking somebody like them and putting them in our role, right? And I think that that's why you've seen the measure of success that you have is again, it comes back to authenticity. That's really inspiring. So talk to me about, like, when did you know, like, coming up, how did we end up in chiropractic? How did we end up with athletes? Like, what was that journey like? Kind of, how did you decide that this is the path that you wanted to take?
Totally. And I have one last before.
Sure. Yeah. Sorry.
I do have no, you're good. I have a story that, I wanted to be a chiropractor since 8th grade. So this is a dream come true. So I have, this has been a long time coming. The one thing that I tell every single patient that walks in is, you're a great person. I really like you. I enjoyed our time together. I don't want to see you here. If you're here, that means you're reliant on me and you're still in pain. If you want to come in for maintenance stuff to make sure that you're like, we're still doing well, great. But I don't want to see you. I want you out of here as quickly as possible. I'm trying to not keep you as a client, right? And when people understand that I'm not trying to get money from them, I'm not trying to sell them a $10,000 package, I'm not trying to see them 3 times a week for the next 6 months, they trust me. And they know, again, what I said before, I'm trying to do everything I can to get them better. And so that's the most counterintuitive business advice you can, or sales pitch you can give, is I don't want you to be in here, but that's because I care about you. I want you to be out of pain. When they realize that, they're like, oh yeah, well, absolutely. I want my relative to be out of pain. I'm going to send them in to see you. And so when they understand that, I don't need to see someone 100 times, because that one person is going to refer me 3 people, and those 3 people are going to refer me 3 more people each. And so now you have people that understand that they're cared about. And so I don't need to see the same person over and over and over and over. And that's why I've had 190 new clients or new patients this year. I need those people to feel cared about, because they're the ones that spur the business on. And so as soon as I stop caring about people, as soon as I become money motivated and scared and trying to cling on to people, that's where, the referrals stopped coming. And so that's a big thing. It's unbelievably counterintuitive. That's like, I don't want your business. I want you to be better, so I don't need your business.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I have a different business, but I feel similarly, where it's like, and I think a lot of people are that way, but there's a fine line between being afraid of selling something, or being afraid of selling yourself, or charging what you're worth, which is not what you're talking about.
Right.
And just being authentic and really caring about the work that you do. It doesn't mean that you don't want to be compensated for that or live a good life.
Mhm.
But that's so interesting. Let me think about
And
that a
you
little
can
bit.
apply that to so many different things, right?
Yeah.
If it's a gym member, obviously you want to keep the gym member, but
It's
you
just
want them
different.
to
Yeah.
have the progress, right? It's
Yeah.
like, I don't want you to just come in here and get your workout.
Yeah, man.
I want you to be involved in the community. I want you to see this progress. That's why we have, like, that's why we chart your metrics, is because I want you to see that you're getting better and want to get better continually. And that's why we're doing this. You're not just a paycheck for me as a gym owner. You're not just a paycheck for me, as a client. It's, you are progressing and I'm helping you there, and we're moving on that journey together. So whatever sphere you're in, you can find that sort of, I don't know, way to phrase it to your clients that, like, hey, I'm not in this for a paycheck. I'm in this for you.
Yeah. So you talk about not wanting the patients and really just focusing on their results. And for me, I can tell you right now, I have worked with hundreds of gym owners, let's just say, in that particular business or those two businesses that I was a part of. And you couldn't get me on a call if you didn't give a shit and you were just trying to have me own your results and whatever else. But man, I would go to great lengths, and I still will. I love this. There's people, I don't have anybody that I charge any money right now. I'm kind of floating in space right now, right? And
Yeah.
so there's people I'm on calls with all the time still because I'm like, oh, what's going on with it? I mean, you and
Right.
we've continued to have phone calls. And man, I will do anything in my power to help somebody with the thing that I do professionally. And I see that in you too, right? Whereas, like, I'm not even interested. You couldn't hire me to do what I do for somebody that I don't respect or, don't feel is giving it their best effort or whatever. And so there's definitely some crossover there that I see in what you're talking about. I think it's a different medium. Today's show is brought to you by High Level CRM. High Level is an all-in-one platform designed to help entrepreneurs grow their businesses without the need for multiple softwares or an IT team. Not only does their easy-to-use software allow you to track and manage your leads throughout each phase of the relationship, but it also allows you to build funnels, track stats, and more. Guys, I sat down and added up the cost of software I was able to replace with just one app, and it was over $1,000 per month. Because this is an all-in-one application, I also save a ton of headaches connecting apps and building automations, and the team at Go High Level does a great job of getting you started quickly and easily when you sign on. I cannot more highly recommend these guys. Right now, Spear and Clover listeners get a free 14-day trial of High Level CRM for themselves. Click the link in our show notes to support the show and get started on your free 14-day trial today. Today's show is brought to you by Scaling with Media. I mean, literally, like, if it weren't for the folks at Scaling with Media, you would not be getting this. Scaling with Media is a truly revolutionary company for any entrepreneur who wants to reach a larger audience without taking on the years of experience necessary to master the required skills. These guys do it all. From helping you develop your creative plan to editing, sourcing content, copywriting, ads management, and way more. Whether you're looking to launch a YouTube channel or podcast, or you just want to scale your business out to more eyeballs, these guys are the absolute best one-stop shop. But that's not all. Right now, Spear and Clover listeners who sign up for their brand launch package will receive a free professional grade studio kit that I'm actually recording right now on. The studio kit includes a professional microphone, stand, lighting, and headphones, and is worth well over $500. Take action now by going to scalingwithmedia.com/spear and claim your free studio kit. Again, that's scalingwithmedia.com/spear, scalingwithmedia.com/spear. Now back to the show. So tell me about the origin story. How did Michael Risher end up with the cape?
Yeah. So when I was in 7th grade, I broke my back.
Oh my God.
And, I don't know, I have my little spine mug here.
Yeah.
But basically, the front and the back of my L5 vertebrae broke in the middle and split apart. And so I was playing baseball at the time. It happened in gym class, end of 7th grade, and bothered me all the way through 8th grade. And so I played a full baseball, football, and volleyball season with fractures in my back. It's pretty common with young male athletes. Didn't want to go get an x-ray, didn't want to go get it checked out. I was like, I'll just wait till I get to basketball season because I don't really like basketball anyway. And so, I mean, I was playing outside linebacker and running back. I'm hitting someone on, I don't know if you know much about 8th grade football, but you don't pass the ball very often. If you do, it's to the running back. So I was getting hit on literally every single play. I could hardly walk after games. But the one constant was I would go see my chiropractor. He would get me out of pain, functioning properly so that I could go play another week. Now, in hindsight, and I tell this to parents all the time now, is it's not worth it to push through. It's 8th grade football. You'll be fine if you miss a couple games, right? Yeah. Go get it. Go get an x-ray. You don't need to push through pain like that. So I've learned a significant amount from that. But I realized how beneficial that was to me. So I was always interested in chiropractic and wanted to be a chiropractor, said I wanted to be a chiropractor, but it didn't dawn on me till later kind of why. And so I realized two things probably in the past 5 years, I realized these two things and what drew me to chiropractic, aside from that origin story of, oh, chiropractor really helped me and impacted my life and I want to impact other people's lives. I really like fixing things. I'm really bad at fixing things. I can go in and take pretty much anything that's broken and make it functional. There's always going to be a screw left over that didn't go back in the right place. Yeah. It's not going to be aesthetically pleasing. It will work to the extent that it works now, but it's not pristine. It's not a good job. It is just barely functional. So realized fixing things was not my calling. Really actually realized that in 5th grade when I fixed the pencil sharpener. You know how you used to be able to, like, you plug it, you keep the pencil sharpener plugged in, and when you put the pencil in, that's when it starts going. Yeah. Well, I fixed it, quote unquote, but now every time you plugged it in, it started to go. So you had to keep it unplugged, and then anytime you wanted to use it, you plug it in, it starts whirring, and then you unplug it again. So there's some screw that was left over at the end. So I love fixing things. I also found out I'm a huge extrovert. I get so energized around people, and I love interacting with them. I love loving humans. Like, that's at its core, that's what I love to do, is being around them, pouring into humans and loving humans. And what better thing for me to do than fix humans? I get to fix something. That's the analytical part of my mind. That's the mechanical part of my mind. But I love interacting with humans. Fixing humans is what I was created to do. And that is, like, at its core, that is everything that I love to do, is fixing humans. And so that's kind of, origin story side, how that impacted and how I chose chiropractic specifically was because I broke my back. Regardless if I break my back or not, I think I end up in the exact same spot because that was just wired in me.
Yeah, and you're taking away pain and you're giving performance, right? I think that's that's a beautiful thing, man. It's a beautiful way to put it, that you love loving humans. I think, and it's obvious. It's funny because I think we have a good relationship, but it is at a little bit of arm's length, because as you were coming in, I was kind of stepping out. And
right.
Obviously, I'm not there day to day at all anymore, and haven't been for some time. But it's very cool. I feel like I'm getting to know you even better today. And I think this is I see it over and over again, whether it's on this show or just people, man. Like, you can just tell when people love what they do. You can tell when people want to be in the room. You can tell when people want to talk to you. And I think that it's just so clear whenever I've engaged with you and I've seen you working and doing stuff like that. And even the fixing things from a business perspective, because my next question, which you maybe already have sort of started to answer, is, where do you feel that you got your business mind from? Because you went to chiropractic school, not business school. And so I'm hearing you make some pretty good business decisions. So where does that come from?
It runs in the family a little bit. My grandpa is an entrepreneur, he no longer owns his business, but he owned a business, sold a business. Everyone in my family worked for that business. I think we had great grandpa, dad, and myself. So 4 generations of my family worked in this business that my grandpa started. And so there's kind of, I've seen that since growing up, but I've always had just an adventurous spirit and really wanted to be a leader. And you're able to be adventurous, you're able to lead people working for someone else, but it's different. You're always reporting to someone else. And I think the way my mind works, the way I just think about things, to have limits on what I think is detrimental. And working for someone else, there's a limit to what you can do because you're not in the driver's seat. You're not making those decisions. Whereas when you're the business owner, you're in complete control and you can take it wherever you want. So removing the limits from, what my brain thinks is possible was huge and very, very beneficial as far as, like, my ability to be an entrepreneur.
How do you feel about failure? Like,
happens.
Do you have a fear of it? Like, because I don't want to color this. Like, what if things didn't go as well as they did in 2020, let's say? How do you think you would have handled that?
Yeah, that's something that I have had to work through a lot.
Yeah.
I definitely have a fear of failure. I think if you don't have a fear of failure, you're kidding yourself in some regards, right? There's always the thought in the back. And if you don't have a fear of failure, you're probably being too reckless, right? And there's probably a detriment to that as well, because failure is always that thing. And I think it's something you need to continually work through because failure happens. I mean, I may not get every adjustment to go just how I want it to. So at an individual patient level, failure happens. But kind of thinking through, oh, what if this patient doesn't like me? Or, what if they don't want to come back? And da 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 is, if you let that control you, it binds you and you can't move forward. And
Yeah.
so do I have a fear of failure? Sure. I don't want to fail. And I think it's transitioned from early on, it was definitely a fear of not wanting to do things wrong so that I lose people, to more of a, I don't want to say coping, but like understanding that failure is part of the process. And so as soon as you understand that failure is part of the process, you're probably going to fail more times than you're going to succeed at any given thing. That's when you can move forward and not let it become a crippling fear, but rather a helpful guiding, understanding what failure looks like, understanding what failure feels like, having that be a helpful guide instead of a controlling fear. So it's something that I had to work through a lot, because there were so many nights where I found myself up in the middle of the night afraid of what was going to happen if I didn't succeed. And I've worked through that, and we can talk about how I worked through that, because I think there are certain things, but not letting fear of failure control you and cripple you is so important.
Yeah, I feel it's interesting you put it all that way, because definitely there's, I don't know. I definitely have felt fear in a lot of ways. I have more fear of unknown than I do of failure. Because I'm trying to think of, like, right now.
And maybe I'm conflating the two. Maybe it was,
Maybe.
oh, I don't know. Because I think when you're talking about fear, there's a lot of crossover, right? There's so many different things swirling around when you're afraid.
Yeah. To your point, I think your desire to pursue whatever, your dreams, helping people, having your own practice, being your own boss, all of the things we've spoken about up until now, your desire is in excess of your fear, right? I think, I've heard courage described as having fear and taking action anyway, right? And I think that's probably a suitable definition for our purposes here. For me, since I mentioned it, I don't have a fear of failure. Frankly, I don't know what success would mean for this podcast, right? Or even the other stuff that I'm planning on doing. I don't really know. I know that I like talking to you. And I know that I liked talking to Matt earlier today. And I know that I've liked talking to everybody that I've had the podcast with. And I hope other people will like to listen to it. But I do have some fear right now. But the fear isn't about failure. I don't care if 100 people listen to this or 100,000, right?
Right.
I don't. I think I would prefer the latter. But I will tell you, this is the first time in many years where I didn't know very, very well what I was doing going into it. Right. And so that's maybe something too. So you talked about ways that you have coped with fear, and maybe it sounds like there was maybe a little more there. So what are some things that you've done? Because you're a young entrepreneur, maybe there's a safety net, but it doesn't seem like it. And so what have you done to sort of cope with that and sort of keep yourself pointed at true north?
I think the biggest thing that I've been able to do is understand where my value and my worth come from.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're afraid of something, the result is what you're afraid of, right? Or the result not happening is what you're afraid of. But if you go deeper than that, it's, well, what does that mean about me, right? Because, okay, whatever, this business isn't successful, well, that's fine. But does that define me as a human, or does it not? And I think when you understand that your worth as a person, it does not come from your success or failure at something, then you're able to operate freely. And so I know that whether this business is successful or it fails, that's not my defining characteristic. That is not who Michael Risher is. I'm so much more than that. And so that was the biggest thing. There's a lot of self-worth around success, around the business, that I had to completely separate myself from. Otherwise, it was crippling. And I really think that was the biggest thing, is understanding where my real self-worth is, because it's not just as a business owner, it's not just as an entrepreneur, it's not just as a chiropractor. There are pieces of that I am, but that is not, if you said, hey, who is Michael Risher? I'm a son, I'm a friend, I'm a Christian, I'm so many things before I'm an entrepreneur, right? Yeah. Entrepreneur is so much lower on the list. Chiropractor is so much lower on the list than we think about sometimes, because we are so involved in our businesses all the time.
Yeah, it's such a controllable thing to be successful at those things above that line, right? Exactly. That's so interesting. I think this is the coach coming out a little bit here. It's easy and I hear it so often. There are these, you've kind of been saying them, there are these, I guess, cliches or whatever of like, just serve first and know your why. And it's not all about money and that type of thing. I think that for somebody like you, who is clearly out to leave a mark on this world, in whether it's on a person, on a professional athlete, or on a population at large, which, I'm certain that one day you will. When you say it's not about financial success, it's about me doing the best that I can, loving everybody that comes through the door if possible, and helping to heal them and take pain away and give them back performance. The fine line that you walk is you got to gut check yourself and say, am I using that as a crutch to not try to be financially successful, or to not try, oh, you don't know me, bro. I got the best Krav Maga studio in town, but we only charge $99 and I don't take any money home. And okay, well, that's maybe not the same thing. And I think that sometimes the medicine can be poisonous if you use it in the wrong way, right?
And you're a Grant Cardone guy. I listen to Grant Cardone sometimes, and then I literally hear you saying the same thing, but not real estate in a gym thing. And so sometimes I'll hear Grant Cardone something. I'm like, that sounds oddly like something Jason would say. So I know that whether or not you're like, oh yeah, I listen to Grant Cardone's podcast or whatever.
No, it's funny. I don't think I've ever really, I've heard him talk probably, but I don't know him that well. I have to check it out. I know who he is, but yeah.
Yeah. You don't have to be you don't have to be like a fan of his work to be a Grant Cardone type of guy, or he's the celebrity, or maybe Grant Cardone is a Jason Skisick kind of guy.
Come on, get the fuck out of here with that.
Thing, right? Yeah. But there's so many parallels. So I read this book called The 10X Rule. Have you read that?
Is that Grant Cardone?
Yeah.
Okay, I've read that. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
And I actually listened to the audiobook, which I would highly recommend listening to the audiobook of that. Hearing him narrate it is incredible.
Yeah.
But he said, you are morally obligated to have as much success as possible, right? And I was like, well, that sounds a little bit weird. But then he said, think about it this way, right? If you're not maximizing your skills, you are morally depleted, right? If you are holding stuff back, if you're not doing your best job, morally, there's something wrong with that. And so why is it any different in business? You're morally obligated to have as much success as you possibly can, right? That doesn't necessarily mean you need to be a bazillionaire and live this lavish lifestyle, but I don't know, the more money you make, the more you can impact the world financially, the more you can give away. It doesn't have to be, oh, I'm making all this money for myself. You can set your kids up for success. You can set other family members up for success. You can give money away, but there are all these things that are not afforded to you if you don't have that success. And so, and not to mention, are you using your talents to the best of your ability if you're not trying to have as much success as possible? So I think the way that I found over that crutch is, I am morally obligated to have success in this, or to, seek success, because that means that I'm maximizing my abilities. I'm not just holding stuff back. And that means that I'm more able to help other people. Success for me is treating 100,000 people a year. I'm doing people a disservice if I don't treat that many, and I think that's gross exaggeration, right? But you see the picture.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I guess I'm a Grant Cardone guy. I forgot that he wrote 10X Rule, but either way, I think we do have a duty to ourselves and to the world to do the best that we can, to be fruitful, right? To use the gifts that we have and to do the best we can. I also think, I used to think I would write a book about the currencies of life, but I don't think I will. But because it's kind of obvious, and I think it's probably 3 chapters long, but it's everybody gets hung up on this thing of money. okay, well, maybe money. And I could regale you about why I think Elon Musk or, Bezos are out there doing really amazing things to further the human race. But it could also be relationships. But then you better be as successful in relationships as you can. Because I
Yes.
got to tell you, I got no time or patience for the person that goes, oh, you don't understand me, bro. Or you don't understand me. I'm a relationship person. And it's like, okay, yeah, but like, are you starting book clubs and taking people, tours of the city? Like, are you doing something with that to propagate more relationships and love and connections? If you're doing that, then great. But if you're not, you're just giving yourself an excuse not to use the gifts that you
Mhm.
have. Because I know
Exactly.
tons of people where it's, genuinely, where they're like, oh, no, no, yeah, I don't care about financial success. And it's like, okay, fine. I'm not telling you to be me. Honestly, bro, I don't care about financial success. I really
Yep.
don't. I am dispassionate about the balance of my bank account.
Yep.
I am much more focused on helping somebody in the ways that I am able to help them, right? And I see that in the best of us over and over and over again. And it doesn't mean necessarily financial success.
Right.
Fortunately, it often does equate to financial success in one way or another. And so you talk about maybe treating 100,000 people a year. And I think that I almost said, I think you're bound for great success or glory or whatever, but I don't think so. I think what it really is you are taking the steps that people who are financially and career successfully,
Right.
that was a
Right.
terrible way to say that, do. And so how do you scale this? How do you take the thing that are your core values and the things that you get up and do every day? And how do you scale that out to, let's use the 100,000 number. How do
Right.
you scale that out?
And did you just say, did I imagine, or did you just say luck is when preparation meets situation? Did you just say that, or
Preparation. Yeah. Luck.
yeah?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that was, I mean, that perfectly encapsulates, like the situation may never come up where you make millions and millions of dollars, but you're preparing and you're putting yourself in those situations. And like that's where success comes. It's not the money number necessarily.
Sure. Sure.
I think everything you said is phenomenal. I think scaling it is interesting because I want people like me, and I wake up every morning. I'm a dreamer. My wife will tell you that I have more bad ideas than I have good ideas. And, like there's so many of these things that I see in myself that I want in employees around me to
Mm-hmm.
help spur on the business. And where I've seen this happen well and this happen poorly is how you enable people to advance, right? And so if you cap someone and you say, hey, this is as far as you're going to get, someone like me, I'm going to hit that and then I'm going to leave. And that's fine if you want to replace me with someone else, right? But the big challenge that I've really been thinking about is how do you remove the cap from an employee, right? How do you say there's no limit to what you can do as an employee and get buy-in to the company and get buy-in to the future of the company? But and maybe it's a money number, maybe it's a creativity. Like how do you remove the ceiling off of someone and say whatever you can imagine, you can accomplish, but we're going to accomplish that for this business,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think the places I've seen it not work is all right, this is your job, whatever, you're the general manager of this thing. That's great, but you can never get past general manager if that's just the last thing that you were able to create and you
Before
don't allow
owner.
for
Yeah.
any more growth. And so all of a sudden you lose your general manager because your general manager has the same mindset as me and wants to go start a business and wants to promote something, right? And now all of a sudden you lose that person. You have to bring a new person up. So the big struggle with scaling is not how do I teach someone to be relational? How do I teach someone how to do the chiropractic stuff? Like that's not the issue. The scaling issue is how do you find, and I don't have the answer to this yet. I have some thoughts, but how do you find the people that are like me that want to grow something, that are imaginative, and you bring them up and remove the cap from them while they're continuing to work for you? And I think there's a lot of culture that comes into that, and culture building and making it less about personal success and more about company success and getting buy-in that way. I think there's financial incentives. I think there's ownership incentives. I think there's a bunch of different ways to do that. And I haven't found the perfect method. But when you talk about scaling, you want to have the right type of person to scale with. And that's more the direction that I'm looking at is I look at myself and how would I keep myself as an employee?
That's my question to you. That's so funny you just
Right.
said that.
Right.
Because would you work for you?
I think I would. So a lot of his opportunity. Well,
No, you
right.
wouldn't. Bullshit. You said you wouldn't.
I'm telling you that the way that I'm thinking, right? There's because I've seen there was a company that I wanted to work for and I really
Okay.
believed in it and I wanted to work for it. And then I saw what it looked like at the top and I said, no thanks.
So,
And so I think for me, maybe right now it would be ownership. Like I would have to have ownership in something to want to work for a company.
yeah.
But the I don't know, it's more about the chase and more about the imagination and the creativity and
Yeah.
the drive in that than it is about the ownership for brand new me, you know?
Okay.
And so I
Okay.
think if I go back, I think I could create an environment where I could hire myself 4 years ago, and because I understand before I had a taste of like, oh, wow, I get to make all the decisions. And that's really what I value at this point. I think having the common goal, feeling heard, and feeling like I'm helping guide the company in a direction that I believe in,
Yeah.
those are the big things. So 4 years ago, yes, I think I would work for myself. Now, I don't know that I'd work for anybody.
It's interesting, and again, this is maybe not the format for this because we'll have this conversation without the recording going in a
Right.
week or so. But my question is, what part of you is most rare in your industry? Is it the part of you that loves your clients? Is it the part of you that's good at your job? Is it the part of you that gets people to come back because you care about your clients? Or is it the part of you that takes risks and understands how to structure something and attract people to a business and build something and overcome fear? What is more rare in chiropractic, in your opinion, between those two sides of you?
So um, I think currently what's rare in chiropractic is actually, or at least more rare, is the way that I practice. And so
Mm-hmm.
not that I'm the best adjuster in the world, although I'm constantly striving to become a better adjuster and I want to be the best adjuster in the world. Not that I'm the best at soft tissue, but I think the combination of all of those things is more rare in chiropractic than you would think. Everybody cares about their patients, or at least does when they start, right? You don't get into chiropractic because you want to make a lot of money. Let's be honest. There are far more lucrative jobs out there. So it's never about the money when you start. It's all about I want to help people. I want people to be out of pain. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that's pretty consistent across the board. I think there are a lot of extroverts out there. I think there are a lot of people that are very good relationally. I've met a bunch of them. So I don't think I'm necessarily unique there. But when I was looking at, and kind of going back to what we talked about when we started, when I was looking at the entire landscape of chiropractic PT trainers, there was a large gap in the middle of all of that. And you get some chiropractors that don't adjust at all and only do rehab. You get some chiropractors that only adjust and don't do any rehab. And I think those are very standard, like sides of the spectrum. I'm very much in the middle, maybe a little bit
Mm-hmm.
more towards the rehab side, but I'm very much in the middle. And the way that I kind of set myself up was to be that standout technician, to be that standout model that nobody else has
Mm-hmm.
replicated, at least as far as I've seen. We can go in depth as you want on the certifications that I did to set myself apart, the different niche things that I learned to work with professional athletes, which are all important, but kind of identifying the hole in what that broad spectrum is like. Where is the biggest hole in people's care? And let me create something that fills that hole.
Yeah. And I think that's all so valuable, right? And it's why you're in the position you're in. It's why I asked you to do the show. I think maybe what I was getting at a little bit was, I think a lot of times entrepreneurs hold two ideas that I think are contradictory. One is that they're exceptional and that they are different and they have their own perspective and point of view and they have this method. And then the other is, why can't everybody do what I do? Why can't I
Right.
scale this out to 100 locations or whatever? And you
Right.
cannot hold those two things at the same time. Either you are exceptional, you're a beautiful butterfly, not to
Right.
disparage you, or everybody is just like you. And so I guess
Right.
what I'm saying is, I tend to favor this one for most people that I've spoken with is
Right.
typically the entrepreneur that I'm talking to is usually pretty unique. And I think you are unique. And so what I would say is, as you look to scale, I would be hesitant to try to find only exceptional people to do that
Right.
because probably you just need people that can love. And and can learn what it is that you've designed and developed. And then they won't be usurping your power in 6 months when they figure it out.
Right. And that's the big thing that I've had this conversation with other docs is when you're hiring someone, you don't necessarily want to have someone that has all of the techniques figured out and stuff. You want someone that's intelligent. You want someone that's driven, and you can teach them how to do things well enough to accomplish the task. But like the emotional intelligence and the, I don't know, actual knowledge of the human body and stuff, that's more what you're after rather than, oh, I'm so technically skilled at this point. It feels so weird saying this, but like you're asking me on the show to talk about myself and what I do. I do think I have a rare combination of ability, like technical ability, and like emotional intelligence and all of that whole piece. And so I think I'm rare in that capacity. So I'm looking for only one section of that as I hire, because I think, I can do a good enough job of teaching people how to do the technical aspect.
Well, and if you can find people who love to change people's lives and love to help people and want to learn it, they will be so thankful that somebody came before them and set up this business with vision and with the things that maybe that they might want, but don't necessarily have. I mean, you got 2 jerseys on the wall behind you. There could be 28 others or more. And the jerseys that are on those wall have a unique combination of not just genetics, which is part of it, not just the right schools and the right coaches, not just they didn't blow out their ACL their senior year, their work ethic to practice and learn skills that they can execute at a high level. There's this unique combination of somebody who not only can do it, but also really, really wants to do it, right? And loves it. There's this unique combination that results in excellence. I think you've got it. I think that I really do hope, and I would love to help in any way that I can to help you to scale this out, because I think it's really, really important and can make a big impact.
Appreciate it.
And so, we're going to have you on again. I know there's some stuff you're working on out into the future. I would love to have you on as that's coming around. So we'll kind of put a pin in that for now. But I do ask 2 questions of everybody that comes on the show. And the first question is, if you had access to unlimited financial resources, what would you do to profitably grow your business?
I think, first of all, figuring out ad spend and like true marketing would be the first thing that I would do, because everything we've done, and a large part of chiropractic in general, is organic growth and word of mouth and stuff. And I think, especially when you're a startup and we didn't take out any loans, I think the first thing would be, let's learn marketing. And whether that's, and we've talked about different masterminds and, paid courses, and you can hire people to do all of that stuff. And so I think that would be the number one thing. I really think that would be the number one thing. And then the number 2 thing would be building out facility. Because right now when you start up, you kind of have to work with the space that you're in. So, the gym that I'm in has its own personality, and my place has its own personality. And I think I would want to, have everything kind of match the personality. And they're close enough where it works really well. But, there are some things where like, okay, well, this is a little bit of a clash in personality and vibe and all of that. And it just happens as you're leasing space. So I think the number one thing would be learning how to market and putting actual money and actual dollars into marketing. That would help scale immediately. And, if you can do that, you can start to scale there. And at some point, do just a little bit of ad spend, which you've given me a lot more. We can talk more about that another time. But the other thing that, and I think this is where it comes from, is Jason Khalipa, the box to business mindset, right? Creating, not just having a business, but or not just having like a chiropractic clinic, but having everything be cohesive throughout all of it. There are certain things that, you see this chair back here, right? That's a borrowed, or not a borrowed chair. That's a chair that we got from someone because we just liked how it fit. And so like, does it do the job? Yeah. But if I had unlimited resources, I would get someone to make a brand new version of that chair, because they don't sell it anymore. Like that sort of thing where all of a sudden you get everything has a purpose and everything is created for its intended purpose within the clinic. And we're getting closer to that point, but like the cohesiveness and everything being kind of congruent and all working towards the same goal. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally makes sense. When you walk into like, I think the people that nail it are like hairstylists, like high-end salons, and sometimes high-end bars or cocktail lounges. You walk in and you're like, wait, did you hire an artist to paint a portrait of an old-timey thing that fits your bathroom decor? Like, I mean, it's just everything is cohesive and matches, and the uniforms, and they hand you the bill and it's on a clipboard that's old-timey, and like just all of that stuff is so thoughtful. Who's really good at that? Not Sienna Tavern, but it's the same group. Bombo Bar? Bombo Bar.
Oh, yeah,
Walk into Bombo Bar in Chicago. I think they have like 5 locations nationwide. Shout out to Chef John. But Bombo Bar, you walk in and everything, I mean, most people would say it's like Instagram-y, everything's Instagram, but more importantly, it's all cohesive. It all makes sense. It's like this record with this label, like makes sense to be up on the wall next to this pair of sneakers or whatever the hell it is.
No, exactly. And I think while that's more minor as far as driving business, it is definitely something that currently lacks for me. Just because like we have a single office inside of a gym. And so I think it's something that currently lacks that would be the largest upgrade within the business.
I mean, walk into the UFC Performance Center or walk into Exos, and I'm pretty sure that it would be cohesive, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's how it is. The second question is, if you had to start a different business and it couldn't be in chiropractic, what would it be? Or a gym? Don't give me a gym.
I've already started the fantasy football one, so I won't go there either. I think I would start a sports agency. So I would probably have to go get my law degree and pass the bar and all that. I would go be a sports agent because I think there are a lot of, or an NFL scout, something in that kind of range where I think there's a lot of undiscovered talent, or there are a lot of people that just can't make it because they don't have the right connections, or they don't have the money and all that stuff. And so I think I would go in that direction where still helping people reach a goal, but it's different, slightly different.
Yeah, that's a good answer. Well, Mike, this has been a great conversation. This will be maybe a good way to wrap up. If I'm watching or listening to this podcast and I'm not a chiropractor and I don't own a gym, what are maybe the things that have served you most that are universal to, in your opinion, entrepreneurship?
I mentioned it before, but I think the kind of adapt or die type mentality, challenges are going to come up. You are going to face challenges. I 100% guarantee that. You can either face them and overcome those obstacles, or you can say, now this is too hard, I'm going to quit. Right. So I think the adapt or die, or the overcome obstacles, that's a huge one for people. That a lot of people, when the going gets tough, some people quit. And if you want to be an entrepreneur, as the going gets tough, you can't quit. You have to keep pushing forward. So I think that's a big one. And I really think, and I know you kind of made a joke of like understanding your why, but when you keep the understanding of why you got into something and the real reason why you're doing it, it makes overcoming things easier. Right. So I think those two go hand in hand where, okay, something tough comes up. I know that I started a business to help people, but also to support my family. So now I have two things that are like, okay, the going gets tough. I'm going to keep going for my family. I'm going to keep going for these patients. And it just gives you a greater ability to overcome those obstacles. So I think those two are huge. That's
a great answer. I'll point out the thing about the why. It's not that I'm against knowing your why. I'm totally all about knowing your why.
Right.
But motherfucker, don't let your why also be a why not, for why you're not successful, or why you're not trying harder, or why you don't move to a better, whatever.
Yeah.
I just think people use it as a crutch sometimes.
Absolutely. And I know we've talked about that, having that.
And then, so the last thing is, a lot of people listen to this, they're working remotely, they're sitting at their desks all day. You're the best chiropractor I know. Is there anything you would tell somebody to try and avoid, deteriorating if they're working from home, or if they're watching this and maybe they're not super physically active?
I would say specifically if you're working from home, top 1/3 of your computer screen, even with your eyes. That's the biggest at-home setup. Otherwise, you're slumped like this, or you're looking down, or whatever. Top 1/3 of your screen, even with your eyes.
Yeah.
The other thing that I would say is pair activity with something you're going to do regardless.
Okay.
I do my rehab exercises every morning while I'm brushing my teeth. And so it's paired with something. I'm going to brush my teeth every day. If I don't brush my teeth every day, there's something wrong with me. but I'm going to also do my exercises as I brush my teeth. I'm going to eat breakfast every day. So I'm going to do my exercises on my way to breakfast or while I'm making breakfast or whatever it is. So I'm pairing activity with something that I'm going to do regardless.
Oh,
Those
I love
things
that.
I think are helpful.
I think that was super impactful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Mike, this was great, man. I'd love to have you back on once we get closer to the big top secret launch that we've talked about before.
Absolutely.
So we'll dig into that a little bit more. Thank you again so much for your time. Send my love to Henry and Kristen, and we'll see you again soon.
Henry says goodbye as well.
All right, brother. Have a great day.
You too.
Thank you guys so much for watching or listening to the show. If you enjoyed the show, please don't forget to show us some love by liking, rating, and subscribing so we can keep making more and better content. If you'd like to support the show and get a great additional content like exclusive shows and even live group masterminds, please head over to patreon.com/Spear and Clover to become a member of the tribe. If you're interested in learning more about how we help entrepreneurs, visit spearandclover.com or message us on any of our platforms. Thanks again, and we'll see you soon.